guys, so I'm going to try to briefly explain what I'm looking for with this assignment. Hopefully it is helpful. So basically the topic for this week is the rebellions of 1837. So we've kind of zipped ahead in history. We were talking last week about the fur trade, which kind of spanned a long time in Canada's history, and now we are focusing in on sort of the Ontario, Quebec, St. Lawrence sort of area, which is where a lot of even now, the big decisions for Canada were being made. And those were the most developed colonies at the time. So they had a lot of opinions. So Lower Canada, so Quebec, which is the lower part of the St. Lawrence River here. Both Canadas were unhappy, but here's why Lower Canada was unhappy. They were ruled by the Chateau clique. They were a largely French population ruled by the English. So the Chateau clique are basically a bunch of old dudes who are English speaking, and they are in charge of everything. Upper Canada, so the Upper St. Lawrence, more like Ontario, was ruled by the Family Compact, another group of old dudes who were in charge of everything. Regular people in both colonies, so both Lower and Upper Canada, wanted more democracy. They wanted to be able to have a bit more of an impact on what their lives would look like. They didn't want to just have these old rich guys in charge of everything, even though that's what history had been like up until then, basically everywhere except for France. So they both had rebellions. Your videos will tell you more specifically about it, but I'm just going to give you kind of the similarities and differences. Similarities, I guess, were they wanted more democracy. They wanted less old English white guys to be in charge. Lower Canada, the rebellion was supported by a lot of just regular people, and they were all mostly French Canadians. And so they kind of had a bigger thing going on, and their punishments were really quite harsh after the rebellion. So villages were burned, people were assaulted, people were killed, that kind of a thing. And these were French Canadians sort of revolting against the English families that were in charge. And Upper Canada, it was less supported by the public. They didn't have as strong of opinions about, like, oh, it's a bunch of English dudes. It was more like they just wanted a little bit more say in what was going on. And they had a bit of a smaller rebellion. It was less supported by regular people, and the punishments for being part of the rebellion were less harsh. And so in the end, so Lord Durham decided to the solution for these rebellions that were happening in Canada and how everybody could be just a little bit happier, theoretically, was to put the Canadas together. So first they were called Canada East and Canada West. They were two new provinces, but one colony, and then they were renamed Ontario and Quebec. So Lord Durham said, pop them together. And that'll solve all your problems, maybe a little bit more democratic too, we'll see. But importantly, Lord Durham suggested that they assimilate the French. So turn the French into English, get them to speak English, probably let go of their Catholicism and become Protestants. And this suggestion also took away self-governance from the French Canadians. So interestingly, after this rebellion, put together the Canadas, and maybe parts of the colony had more self-government, so more democracy, but the French Canadians definitely didn't. And so next week we're going to talk about Confederation. So you see that 1867 over there is pretty important. We're going to be talking about how Canada actually became Canada and not just, the colony of Canada or the colony of Lower Canada or whatever. And we'll start talking about the other provinces as well and how they came to join.